This video is based on the knowledge of Carl Gustav Jung, Swiss psychiatrist, founder of analytical psychology, and one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century. Jung used to say that what you avoid looking at within yourself ends up completely dominating you. And perhaps the biggest problem of the modern mind is not overstimulation, but the lack of depth. We live immersed in distractions, accumulating information, chasing performance, while ignoring the silent habits that are slowly destroying our mental health from the inside out. This video is not about what's obvious. It's about what you've stopped noticing because you got used to it. They are routines, patterns, emotional addictions that seem harmless, but drain your self-esteem, exhaust your energy, and sabotage your clarity. Jung believed that real transformation begins when you face yourself without masks. No excuses, no escape. That's what we're going to do now. If this topic has already touched you in some way, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment. I choose to look within, because what you deny dominates you, but what you accept sets you free. Chapter 1. Running from silence to Jung, silence was more than the absence of sound. It was the space where the soul reveals itself. Today, many people can't stand being in silence. They play music to fall asleep, listen to podcasts while walking, videos while brushing their teeth. Every pause must be filled. But why? Because silence exposes what agitation hides. It brings up what was pushed into the unconscious. Insecurities, emptiness, undigested memories, truths that were silenced. Jung believed that what you don't deal with builds up, and silence is the space where that accumulation tries to emerge. The modern mind, conditioned to overstimulation, goes into withdrawal in the face of silence. But this withdrawal reveals just how disconnected you've become from yourself. Contemporary psychology confirms this. Neuroscience studies show that the lack of quiet moments directly affects mental clarity, decision-making, and emotional balance. Without internal space, you live only reacting, without processing, without digesting, without understanding. Avoiding silence is like running from a mirror. It's missing the chance to see what's truly happening inside you. Jung would say that the first step to self-knowledge is being able to sit with silence, not to punish yourself, but to listen to what can only be heard when everything outside goes quiet. Can you stay with yourself? No distractions? No escape? If not, maybe it's time to relearn the value of the pause, because it's in silence that the mind reorganizes itself, and the soul begins to speak. Chapter 2. Suppressing difficult emotions. One of the most common and dangerous mistakes we make is trying to control emotions by suppressing them. Jung was clear about this. What you repress does not disappear. On the contrary, it builds up in the unconscious, and sooner or later, it finds a way to manifest itself. Sometimes as anxiety, sometimes as disproportionate reactions, other times as psychosomatic illness. Modern society has taught us to see emotions as weakness. Crying is seen as drama. Feeling anger is shameful. Being sad seems unacceptable. The result? An emotionally numb generation. Functional on the outside, confused on the inside. Jung said, "We are not made of light alone. We are also made of shadow, and that shadow must be acknowledged. Suppressing sadness doesn't make you strong. It only makes you incapable of processing loss. Repressing anger doesn't make you evolved. It only disconnects you from your ability to set boundaries. Unprocessed emotion doesn't die. It relocates, changes form, distorts relationships, and becomes a symptom. In clinical psychology, this is clear. People who learned early on to swallow what they feel tend to carry more guilt, muscle tension, insomnia, and even self-destructive behavior. Jung's approach was never about living in emotional chaos. It was about creating an internal space where each emotion can be felt, understood, and transformed. What have you been repressing out of fear of being judged? What have you been swallowing, smiling, just to maintain an image? Ignoring difficult emotions solves nothing. It only delays the meeting with who you really are. Chapter 3. Constantly Seeking Validation. Jung said that the ego feeds on image, but the soul needs truth. A mind that depends on constant approval lives on high alert. It filters everything it says, adjusts everything it does, calibrates even its tone of voice, afraid of displeasing, disappointing, or not being accepted. The problem isn't in wanting recognition. It's in needing it to feel worthy. This search for validation isn't a sign of vanity. It's a sign of disconnection from your own sense of value. People who grew up hearing they had to be good all the time, who were punished for expressing opinions, who learned that love is earned through performance, carry a chronic need for acceptance. And that's where suffering takes root. You shape yourself to fit in. You suppress yourself to maintain bonds. You disconnect from yourself to be included. Jung called this the loss of individuality. It's when you move so far from your essence to adapt to the collective that you no longer know who you are without the audience. Today, with social media, this is amplified. Likes, views, comments. Everything becomes a metric of emotional validation. Self-worth is outsourced, but the cost is high: anxiety, insecurity, burnout. The way out: rebuild the connection with your own truth. Jung taught that the process of individuation, the path of self-knowledge, begins when you own who you are, even if it costs you a few approvals. Would you rather be admired for something you're not, or respected for being who you truly are? Chapter 4. Living Only on the Surface. Jung believed that a life without depth is an incomplete life. He said people fear diving into themselves because they sense they won't come out the same. And he was right. We live in an era where everything is fast, shallow, and aesthetic. We've become used to quick answers, catchy phrases, instant solutions. But the mind and the soul don't work that way. The questions that really matter require time, silence, and a willingness to go beyond the obvious. Those who live only on the surface avoid internal conflict, but they also avoid growth. They run from pain, but also from healing. They dodge discomfort, but also meaning. Jung said the unconscious doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It acts between the lines, in the choices you keep repeating without understanding, in the relationship patterns that cycle over and over, in the sensations you feel but can't explain. Living only on the surface is like living in one room of a house and forgetting the rest exists. Depth is scary, but it's liberating. When you go down to your roots, you don't just find pain, you find strength. You discover where your fears come from and begin to dissolve them. You uncover your desires and learn not to be ruled by them. The superficial mind lives in conflict because it never understands the why behind its reactions. The mind that dares to go deeper begins to choose with awareness. Jung saw this inner dive as essential to real transformation. Without it, life becomes a pretty stage with a soul that never shows up. Chapter 5. Repeating the same patterns and calling it destiny. How many times have you found yourself in the same situation with different people, same kind of relationship, same frustration, same ending? Jung said that until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. In other words, you're not stuck because of destiny. You're stuck in patterns you haven't yet seen. The unconscious mind stores past experiences, unresolved traumas, childhood memories, repressed desires. And all of this forms what Jung called complexes. These complexes get activated in specific situations and cause you to react automatically, impulsively, emotionally, as if you're reliving something old. You attract the same type of person. You react the same way to conflict. You return to the same internal places even when everything outside looks different. This isn't bad luck. It's unconscious repetition. The good news is that the cycle can be broken. But for that, you need light. Bring awareness. Name the pattern. Recognize the repeating script. And have the courage to interrupt the sequence, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Jung taught that making the unconscious conscious is the true work of personal development. Reading about yourself is not enough. You must face yourself with clarity. What patterns are you repeating without realizing? What in your life have you been calling destiny, when in fact it's just a lack of awareness? That answer can change everything. Chapter 6. Avoiding the shadow. For Jung, the shadow is everything you reject within yourself. Not just your flaws, but also forgotten strengths, repressed desires, denied emotions, and ideas you were taught to consider unacceptable. The biggest problem isn't having a shadow. We all do. The problem is avoiding it. Jung said, "What you resist persists." The more you avoid looking at your anger, the more it controls you. The more you try to appear constantly positive, the more you suffocate your truth. The more you pretend to be someone you're not, the further you drift from your integrity. Avoiding the shadow is like trying to live with only the good half of your soul. But this good half, isolated, becomes fragile, artificial, insecure. The shadow is like a suitcase you carry but never open. It's heavy. It leaks. It interferes in your relationships, your decisions, your feelings, even when unseen. Facing it doesn't mean giving in to destructive impulses. It means integrating what's been excluded, understanding why it's there, and transforming that energy into consciousness. In daily life, this shows up in subtle ways. Why do certain kinds of people irritate you so much? Why do you avoid certain topics, even when you know they matter? Why do you self-sabotage when things finally start to go right? In many cases, that's your shadow trying to get your attention, not to destroy you, but to be integrated. Modern psychology keeps confirming this truth. The more we deny parts of ourselves, the more inner conflict we experience. The more we acknowledge, accept, and work through those parts, the more whole and authentic we become. Emotional healing isn't about denying your shadow. It's about walking through it with courage. Chapter 7. Waiting to be healed. Before you start living, many people believe they'll only be able to live fully once they're healed. ready, completely resolved. But Jung saw that belief as a major illusion. The idea of total healing is often more of an escape than a goal. It's an unconscious way to postpone life, waiting for a perfect state that will never arrive. According to Jung, transformation doesn't require you to be whole in order to begin. It requires you to be honest with yourself. You don't need to understand everything to take the first step. You don't have to have overcome every trauma to love, create, serve, or connect. Emotional maturity comes from walking with imperfection, not from waiting for it to disappear. Jung affirmed that life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It invites you constantly. With every pain, every choice, every opportunity missed out of fear of not being well enough. In practice, this wait for an ideal state often disguises itself as self-knowledge, but turns into paralysis. How many projects have you delayed because you thought you weren't ready? How many relationships have you avoided out of fear of repeating the past? How many times have you stopped yourself from living, waiting to be healed? Living means facing the unknown with awareness. It's moving forward even with open wounds, but with a present heart. Healing, for Jung, was a process, and the process only happens in motion. Don't wait to be perfect to begin. Begin, and allow the journey to change you. Carl Jung didn't want to create followers. He wanted to awaken more conscious human beings, people capable of looking inward with courage, facing their own contradictions, and integrating both light and shadow to become whole. He knew that the mind doesn't break overnight. It wears down little by little through imperceptible habits, repetitive patterns, escapes that become routine, and silences that are never heard. You've just reflected on 7 habits that silently erode your mental health. And the most important thing now isn't how much you understood. It's what you're going to do about it. Don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait for a new year, a new phase, or someone else's permission. The journey begins when you make the decision to stop running from yourself. Self-knowledge isn't comfortable, but it's the only path that leads to inner freedom. Not the kind of freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to no longer be ruled by everything that used to haunt you from within. If this video touched you in any way, write in the comments. I choose to face myself with courage, and share it with someone who needs to wake up. Someone who looks strong on the outside, but may be exhausted on the inside. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because every week we dive deeper into philosophy, psychoanalysis, and the art of living with awareness. Remember, the mind that refuses to look at itself lives in conflict, but the mind that learns to observe itself honestly, little by little, begins to break free.